Today, it's a great day. Yes. Absolutely fabulous day. And it is a great day and a fabulous day because our recognition that today is a gift from the divine principle to us to come and celebrate this day, to celebrate our truth, to celebrate the goodness, to celebrate the reality of who and what we are, so that as we go forth later into the day and into the week following, we have a greater, more abundant, more harmonious, more healthy week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you bet. So let's take a moment and we'll pause and reflect. There is a power and a presence for good in the universe. There is one life. That life is God. That life is perfect. And that life is our life now. As we come together today to celebrate that truth, we also come together to celebrate the truth of who and what we are. We come together to celebrate the divine gift that our life is and the livingness that we have and the experience that we take forth and the goodness that we bring into the world. There is a light that shines within each and every one of us. That is the divine light. And as we study more, as we grow more, as we spiritually walk down our path ever further, that light grows brighter and brighter. It shines in our life and it shines in the world. It shines in the life of all others. And I am grateful and thankful for that. And I release this to God in thanksgiving, and so it is.
And so it is.
So Thanksgiving last week, a lot to be thankful for. You know, as I was reflecting on Thanksgiving for myself and my family, and it's really easy sometimes to get caught up in all the stuff. You know, our day-to-day stuff that, you know, the things that happen. For some of us, there was some pretty happening things that weren't so positive this last year. But as I looked around at my family sitting at the table, I realized, what more do I need to recognize the truth of Thanksgiving?
There you go.
You know, and then I realized when I stop and pause and I take time and I actually look in the mirror and I see the divine principle looking back at me, that I have that gift, that breath in my life, how wonderful that is. And so I kind of moved forward on that as I was thinking about what I wanted to share today for this. And I want to talk about a couple of things. First, you know, we're still continuing on talking about this master teacher, this fellow Jesus, and the things that he taught, and how it affects us, the process that he laid out for learning the truth of who we are and then putting that truth into practice. He said, it's done unto you as you believe. And then he taught the things that he taught so that we know and we could believe more and even more. Matter of fact, he said, I came to give life and to give it more abundantly. He came to teach life and to teach it so that we could experience it more abundantly. Mm-hmm. That experience of life and living it more abundantly is not something that happens at the end. It happens in the process as we move through. And in that process, think about this. We've talked about, you know, we are God expressing as us, right? Okay. Ask yourself this question. Why would God express as you or me and not want to express in an ever more abundant, harmonious, prosperous, healthful way in life? And yet, most of us live our life as just the process of living. I was reading something from Thomas Troward this last week, and he's talking about living the spirit of life. You know, and I thought about it. You know, we understand living spirit, living as spirit, but living in the spirit of life, it's like being in the spirit of a game or being in the spirit of the song. In other words, as we live our life in the moment, to live it with the spirit of livingness, And I thought, maybe I've fallen a little short on that. You know, we get caught up in the mundaneness and the stuff of day-to-day life. But think about it. Think about what it would be like if we lived life in the spirit of livingness all the time. And then I got to thinking, well, why don't we? Why don't we? And
It's our choice.
well, you know, Mickey, it's not just a choice. It's what we've been taught, basically. We came into the world. We grew up in a family. You know, we had siblings. You know, we had life. We had friends at school, and we were part of the group, right? We're all part of that group. And some of the kids were the kids, and some of the kids, we just sat over in the corner, right? But there was nothing in school and nothing in our family, and unfortunately, most of the time, nothing in our spiritual teachings that taught us to live life in the spirit of livingness. You know, to really get excited about taking that breath, that first breath in the morning, and coming into an awareness that today's the day that God had gifted me. Think about it. If we'd started that when we were little kids, we came into the day, we got excited.
Yeah.
No matter what happened through the rest of the day, you know, it's like that shield. You know, everything can come at us, but it just bounces off that shield because we're ready to go. We're ready to go because we got a bigger God. We got a bigger good. That there's nothing that can come at us that can overcome that. And I thought, well, that's kind of exciting. Maybe we could do that now.
Yeah.
And maybe we're supposed to be doing that now. Maybe we're supposed to be starting our day with that acceptance. We've talked about it. But maybe we're supposed to be opening ourselves up to a greater, higher expectation in the day. Even if the list of things we got to do today is that same old mundane list that we do day in and day out. Maybe if we start that first thing on the list, really excited, really in the spirit of livingness, that the rest of the day, even though it's the same things on that list, all of a sudden the day changes. And the day that we live today is not like the day that we lived yesterday. And the day that we lived yesterday won't be like the day that was before. And tomorrow, I can hardly wait to get there. But in the moment, I'm here now. And I'm here now in all the goodness that God has given me to live in this moment. What an idea. But the important thing, excuse me, drink here. The important thing is to understand what I just demonstrated. And what I just demonstrated was a mindset. And it's a mindset that we often miss as we get caught up in the day-to-day life experience. And that's why when we pause and reflect back onto the words, I came so that they may live and that they may live life more abundantly. He came and he taught. And what he taught was all this stuff that people didn't understand at the time because they were busy being in the physical world. They were worried about making sacrifice to that God and going to that temple and following those laws. And he came and he said, wait a second. He said, when you understand that there's a greater truth, that I and my Father are one, and I am the Son, but you also are the sons and daughters of God. That God exists in you, that the kingdom of heaven can be found not out there, but within. And he tells us to seek first his kingdom. Well, let's see, that means it's not about doing something someplace else, is it? It's about taking time to do it for ourselves. And, you know, Ernest Holmes, as he was teaching the science of mind in one of the books we have is called Living the Science of Mind, and he talks about treating in there, treatment. Treatment is a form of affirmative prayer. And we've talked about it, we'll talk more about it, but he says, take 2 specific times a day, the morning and the evening, and make those times specific. Why do we make those times specific? We make them specific because we put importance upon it. importance. We give it power in our consciousness, and that power exists in us making sure that, when things are important, no matter what's going on our calendar, we still make time for the important things. We make time for that. And that time that we're taking and making to do our spiritual prayer work, it helps to focus the mind. It helps us to center on what it is that we're seeking to see growth, healing, and improvement in our life. And it helps us to keep that mindset. Mindset's really interesting. And we talk about it in many different ways. And I've talked about in the past this concept of willpower. And willpower, oftentimes people confuse with the idea of it's what we use to create. It's what we use when we do our treatment, right? It's the willpower. I'm going to will this to happen. But the willpower, that's not what the will is about. The will is about this part of our consciousness that focuses the most important part of our consciousness, which is our imagination. And when we begin to create in imagination that which we want to see in our life expressed, it's our willpower that keeps our mind focused, so that when it begins to wander, if we're seeking to see more abundance or greater health in our life, and the mind's wandering off into limitation or to an argument, willpower focuses back on the good that we want to see, so that we keep the mindset of goodness, abundance in our consciousness, where we can see it expressed in our day-to-day life experience. Awesome stuff. We have all these things at our beck and call, almost as if we were designed to use them in our life, isn't it? And we really are designed to use them. And when we go back and we look at how humanity evolved, the physical part of evolution, to the point of becoming aware, I am, and then from that point on, all of our evolution becomes conscious. And you look at the history of humanity and you see this evolution on a spiritual level, higher and higher and higher, until one day somebody said, that I am means something. And so he led a group of people. And then later on, someone else came along and said, I am, just like the I am before. And that I am before and I am now, we are the sons and daughters of God. We are here to express life and to express it more abundantly. And let me teach you. And so he did. And so we've taken his teachings now and we have begun to put them into our practice, our day-to-day spiritual practices, so we may grow and experience. One of the things that we talk about in this concept of growing and experiencing is the idea of circulation. And they call it sometimes the law of circulation. And I'm going to read you out of the textbook, but it's really interesting, this concept of circulation. You see it wherever you go. You see, okay, we have fog today. So the weather comes in, the weather goes out, the sun goes up, the sun goes down, we breathe in, we breathe out. We have blood circulating through our body. Everywhere you look, there's this concept of circulation. And you see, that's the way the divine principle works. It creates these great things, and then individualization, specialization breaks off. God created all sorts of beings, but there's one being that specialized, that became consciously aware, and began to recognize its relationship with the greater whole. And in doing so, we are able to express God more abundantly than other living things. But we're able to express God in such a way that God experiences what we express back at it, so to speak. And again, it's still that circulation. It goes on and on and on. So, Ernest Holmes talking about circulation, he says, the law of circulation, based on Matthew 10:8. Freely you have received and freely you give. When the law of circulation is retarded, stagnation results. It is only as we allow the divine current to flow through us and on and out that we really express life. I'm not expressing life again, and expressing it more abundantly. Okay, that's important. It says the law of giving and receiving is definite. Emerson tells us that to beware of holding too much good in our mind. And we all get that. We talk about the law of circulation. We know as we give, we receive. And then it gets into like the law of attraction. Everybody gets excited. We talk about the law of attraction, so we're going to attract more, right? But there's another side of this that we need to be aware of. Because this law of circulation is really just another expression of the law of cause and effect, which is the great law. And the law of cause and effects tells us for every effect there is a cause. And behind every secondary cause, there's another secondary cause until you get to the primary cause. And when you get to the primary cause, we're talking about divine principle. We're talking about God. Because God is the primary cause of all that is, right?
Yeah.
Right? I think,
Yes.
right? I think
Yes.
so. God is sort of, okay? So behind that, go back. We look out into the world, and we see things in the world that don't look so nice. And we go, wait a second, if God's behind everything, how is it that God's behind all that stuff that doesn't look so nice? Because the law of cause and effect works continuously, and it works without judgment. And when some people, and I know it doesn't mean anybody in this room, but when some people decide to take for themselves and not give back, when they impede the law of circulation, all of a sudden they create, through their own consciousness, a belief in limitation. And as they create that belief in limitation, limitation goes out in the world. And this has kind of been the history of humanity as we come down. I've got to get mine, who cares whether you get yours or not? And on a personal level, it can be kind of tough. At a family level, it can be tough. On a national level, it can be really, really tough. And bad things happen. But if you look at the history of humanity over time, it's like ever cycling up in consciousness. And it doesn't mean that bad things aren't happening today. They are, but not so much as they used to. And in the future, not so much now. And part of that is because people like us here in this room that are seeking to express life greater, to make their light, their God light shine brighter in the world, create change in the world, even if you're not aware of the change that you're creating, just by the mere fact that your light shines brighter. By the fact that you believe in abundance and not limitation. By the fact that you believe in a divine principle that is infinite. Infinite. Which reminds me, I wanted to talk about being centered in God. Something else that came to my mind. And we talk about being, God consciousness being centered within each and every one of us. And we get that, right? Mm-hmm. We talk about expressing God and expressing God maximally. That sounds good too, right? But think about this. Think about the idea that if God is centered in me, and God is infinite, and it would be God centered in you, and God is infinite. As the center point of God, everything that God is, has, and does is available to you because you are the central point, which means health, harmony, happiness, abundance, all those things, and you can wrap them up in a big bundle and you can call them love. It's right at the very center of your being. And if you're not experiencing that in your day-to-day life experience, it's not because you're a bad person, it's because you haven't learned the truth of who you are. And that's why we have things like Science of Mind and New Thought to teach you truth teachings. Because when we break down what it was that Jesus taught the world, he taught truth. He didn't teach salvation in the sense that it has to do with forgiveness of your sins. Now, it's important that we do the forgiveness thing. We talked about that last week. Forgiveness is important. But as we come to, we've come through the Thanksgiving thing, and we're now on the other side, and we're looking towards Christmas. It's the holiday season, right? And what do we associate with the holiday season? And it's not Black Friday, for crying out loud. It's not, it's not getting what you can get by knocking a bunch of people over. Yeah. The holiday season is about giving. And forget giving stuff. How about just giving love? How about giving attitude? How about giving light? How about giving consciousness? And that's what it's about. It gets lost in all the advertising and stuff, but when you begin to pull it back into yourself, when you become aware on a moment-by-moment basis of your livingness, in other words, you're in the spirit of livingness, not just in the spirit of the holiday season, but you're in the spirit of livingness. Live. It's like, I think of some of those movie characters, and you see them and they're really, oh yeah, man, they're really living. And I think, well, that's kind of crazy. But on second thought, it's not really that crazy. We were created to be specific, individualized beings. In other words, I'm not like you or you or you, and fortunately, none of you are like me. But the reason for that is, with God being infinite, God needs to express in an infinite way. And so through all of this infiniteness, we get all this diversity under the cover of one unity. One God, one life. There's one life. That life is God. That life is perfect. And that life is our life, my life, your life, now. And we can claim it. We own it. We step into it with that spirit of livingness. Getting back to the law of circulation. When we realize this spirit of livingness, right? And we take it out to the world. You know, you ever been in a place and maybe your day's been kind of like that day, not a great day, and maybe you're with friends and family or whatever, and some person walks into the room and they got a big smile on their face and they're really happy and stuff. You go, oh, that's just what I need. I really just want to wallow in my unhappiness, right? But you know, they're around you long enough and all of a sudden you kind of get a smile on your face. And at that point, you have a choice. You can get up and leave and enjoy your misery, or you can begin to express and experience some of the good. What's happened? Circulation. They came in, they brought happy energy in.
Yes.
You experienced happy energy. Now, you don't have to experience circulation. You can be stuck in your stuff and leave. But if you're going to stay, we're going to circulate. We're going to circulate in energy. We're going to circulate goodness. We're going to circulate love. We're going to circulate abundance.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
A lot of circulation going on, isn't there?
Yes.
But that's the law of circulation. And the law of circulation ultimately is really the law of living.
Yes.
Because that's what living is all about. God created life that we could experience life and express life. That God can experience that expression back. And it is an eternal circulation. And as we go and grow within our own spiritual being, as we get higher in consciousness, and we begin to recognize the truth of who we are, and then, you know, the thing is about recognizing the truth of who you are, is the more that you recognize it, the more aware that you are of it, the more of it that is available to you to be more aware of.
Yes.
Again, it's that law of circulation. If I experience a little good, create a little good, and I see it come back to me, and I get a little good more, well, that's good, so I'm a little more good here, and well, that's really good. And, you know, it's not like I'm taking from you because I'm giving to you, and you're giving back. You know, and it goes back and forth. If it wasn't for the trees, we couldn't breathe. Circulation. But the trees couldn't do what they did if it wasn't for a little tiny single-cell organism that existed on the face of the earth like 1 billion years ago or something like that, that took carbon dioxide and broke it down into oxygen. And then we had oxygen, we had higher oxygen, now we can breathe. Now the trees have something to go back and forth. You know, that little organism is basically alive today in the chloroplasts of plants. That it takes the energy from the sun, it takes the carbon dioxide from the air, it pulls that energy out, it gives it back, and goes out to us. Well, we get that, right? Does everybody understand that?
Yes.
Why don't you understand that when it comes to other good things in your life? It's the same process. Well, we don't. We don't because people tell us not to. We don't because we were told you're not enough. You were only this, or there's limitation in the world. You know, if you don't eat all your food, she's going to starve in China tonight, right? Limitation. We teach that. You know, if you're not a good girl, you're going to be punished forever. That's not a bad idea. I should raise my kids. No, but that's not true. Punishment is a result of making bad choices. Sometimes we call it sin. Sometimes we call it mistakes. But you know, it has a way of coming back and biting us.
Yeah.
And I won't say where it bites us, but it bites us, right? The thing is, circulation, as we look at this, in the law of life and the law of circulation, I've made some mistakes. I've done some not so good things. I'm going to deal with the effects of that until one day I wake up and I realize that there is a power and a presence for good in the universe, and I want to align myself with it. I want to live not the way I've been living. I don't want to live taking from people and not giving back. I don't want to live selfishly. I don't want to live in a belief of limitation. or evil. And as I make that shift within me, things shift. And all of a sudden, I'm no longer subject to all that stuff because I'm creating a greater good. And the more that we individually create that greater good, the more that we take our time and spend our time creating that greater good mindset within us. And oftentimes we think, well, if I do it, nothing's going to come back to me, and that's one of the things a lot of people think. Well, if I do good, right, and no one else does good, then I'm the one that's the victim of everybody else's bad behavior. This is where faith comes in, and belief, and understanding that there's a greater God than anything you deal with in your life. Anything. But you got to know it. We don't know it most of the time because we live in fear. And fear's a kind of a holdover, that old evolutionary, stuff. But we don't live that way now. We live in conscious awareness. Conscious awareness tells us that maybe there's something better out there than what I've been experiencing. And you know what? That conscious awareness that tells us that doesn't come from somebody outside of us. It comes from within us. Seek ye first the kingdom. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where we find it.
Yeah.
Good stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Circulation. We bring it out into the world. So here today, we're post-Thanksgiving. We had some good Thanksgiving. We recognized that although there was stuff in the world, we had a whole bunch of good stuff to be thankful for. And that's powerful. That's awesome. You've got great stuff. He's got great stuff. You do, you do, you do, I do. And our great stuff is the gift of the divine to us, but not for us to keep, but for us to give back, to share, to create more good, to see more abundance. I learned a lot from this person. I learned a lot from this person and this person. Not so much from her.
Yeah.
but this is the way it is when we interact. Okay? Erin back there has taught me a lot. She doesn't know it because she's not a teacher per se, but she's taught me an awful lot. I don't know if I've taught her anything. Maybe. Have I taught you anything, Erin?
You have.
I have. Well, I'm glad. But this is the way the unity works. When we recognize the unity, and that's part of that truth lesson. That truth lesson tells us that it's not myself against the rest of the world. It's God that I'm a part of, that we're all a part of. There's one life. That life is God. That life is perfect. That life is our life now. And we own it. We claim it. We claim our good. And then we give it back. And more comes back to us. And it's that mindset that we're beginning to establish. And as we create that mindset, which is a mental attitude, all of a sudden, more things unfold in our life. As we learn more of the truth of who we are, more things unfold in our life. As we grow our faith and belief, more things unfold in our life. You see how that works? The more we give, the more we put out, more things come back to us and unfold in our life. And it's ever ongoing. Because I am the center of God's consciousness. All that God is in its infiniteness. Abundance, love, prosperity, health, all those good things centered within you, and you, and you, and you, and you. Because we're all that central focus of God. We're all that one. And when we begin to recognize the truth of who we are, and we take that truth out into the world, there's a world that you would think would be very hungry to hear that, right? You'd be surprised how many people out in the world really don't want to hear how good they are. They want to be caught up in all their stuff, right? Their limitation and their anger and so on and so forth. So what do we do? What do we do? We love them. We love them first. First and foremost. It'd be kind of hard to do sometimes. We love them. And after we love them, if they are harmful in some way, we can set boundaries. But they are our neighbors, and we love our neighbors as we love ourselves. That's part of the teaching of the Master Teacher. part of this whole process. Everything that he taught some way or another comes back to us and our point of expression of God as us in life, and to do it more abundantly. And as we do that, as we learn that, as we experience it, we have ever greater life expression. Right? Good? What time is it? Okay. I'm going to take a break, Mike. I threatened to do this last week. I'm going to see if I can do it today. Thinking one thing and find out that there's something else. We talk about it being one thought away. In truth, it is more than one thought, but that first one thought that's most important is the choice that we make. We make that choice. We make that choice to be part of the living experience. We make that choice to be part of the law of circulation. We make that choice to learn more of the truth of who we are. And we make the choice to put the truth of who we are into practice in our day-to-day life experience. And isn't it awesome when we do?
Yes.
You know, we've learned so much from what materiality tells us about limitation and lack in the world. And there was a time when Ernest Holmes was still alive and teaching. There was a much greater receptivity to the message than there is today. You know, part of that is technology, part of it is just the way the world is, but the message is still so sorely needed today. And as we take this message out, you know, we don't do missionary work per se, but we do take out into the world this loving consciousness. And when we wrap ourselves up in it, when we make it our mindset, when we know in faith and we know in belief and we know in truth that there's but one God and all is God expressing as itself, we have that shield that I talked about. We go forth with that shield. And nothing can overcome us. Nothing can defeat us. Nothing can beat us down. And it doesn't mean we're not going to have bad times. We're all going to experience times. But you see, when you've got God on your side, whatever those times are, the upside is going to be so much better.
You bet.
You know, and that's what we've got to know that. And we've got to put it into practice into our lives. And we don't put it into practice in our lives when we get up in the morning and we start a day, oh, I need a cup of coffee. I start my day like that sometimes. Then I slap myself, wait a second. I don't need a cup of coffee. I need awareness of God. And then I kick myself. And then the coffee tastes so much better afterwards.
You bet.
You know, go figure that. But we do. You look in the mirror. No matter what you see looking back at you, it's lovely. It's beautiful. It's God. It's energy. And energy is what God is on some level. You know, back in the day when Trower was writing, and he was talking about the energies that we use as we do our treatments and we bring ourselves in alignment with principle and stuff, and he talked about this thing called the ethers. And the ethers were really kind of interesting, but Albert Einstein didn't like the ethers because it didn't jive with his theory of relativity. And then there was a couple of physicists, Michaels and Michelson or something like that, and they did an experiment which proved that there wasn't ethers. So physics was really happy. Then everybody's pat themselves on the back, they're good to go, until quantum physics came along. And now there's this big hole in quantum physics that they don't know what to do about. And the thing with quantum physics is, like when I was in high school, we talked about vacuums. A vacuum is an empty space. But quantum physics talks about quantum vacuum. You see, a quantum vacuum is not empty space. A quantum vacuum is what is everywhere, which materiality comes from, which all things basically come out of. And as they begin to describe it, I was reading an article by some physicists yesterday as I was doing some research on this. As they begin to look at it, they begin to think, you know, this looks an awful lot like that stuff we call ethers. But we don't want to use ethers because it's got a bad name, bad rep. So they call it the quantum vacuum. But when you hear someone talk about a quantum vacuum, they're talking about the same thing that Trower was talking about. Talk about the ethers. What's important about that is to understand that it's an energy, that it's ubiquitous. There's no place, no space where this energy is not.
Yes.
Oh, we're getting kind of close, aren't we?
Yes.
And then you add to that information. No matter where this energy is, there's information. And that's how the energy in a quantum vacuum becomes matter, and it does. It's amazing. There's this little thing they call it the God particle. It's a Higgs boson particle. And it pops up in there out of nowhere. And if it's got something called celebrity,
Yes.
more energy comes around it, and the bigger the particle it can make. But the thing about this is, seriously, is that there's no place where energy, this type of energy, doesn't exist. When you understand that, and you put that into the understanding of God being everywhere present, right? When we begin to do our work, when we're doing our spiritual work, when we're looking at the law of cause and effect, when we're seeing a greater God in our life, that greater God is not dependent upon anything that has gone before. And what that means is we get caught up in our physical life. And if I got more bills at the end of the month than I got income, and okay, so I'm treating for a raise on my job, or, win the lottery or whatever, I don't want to do that. Because by me telling God how to come into my life, I've limited God. See, God's not limited. God doesn't look at the things the way I look at them. What I do when I treat for greater abundance is I treat for greater abundance. And then I give it up to God. Because not only can God provide the end point, but God also provides the means to get to that end point. And that's where faith and belief come in. That's where an understanding of the truth comes in. That's where knowing what this idea of an ever-present God means, and how good it is, and how much it expresses in our life, and how we can't really do without it if we don't understand. And we can't do without it if we don't understand. Okay? But we spend so much time in that don't understand space. And so we do without it, and we suffer the consequences. When you begin to know the truth, then you know why you can't do without it. Because no matter where you are, no matter where you go, God is there, and all is well. Life is good. And so it is.
And so it is. Yeah.
Any questions? Anybody have any idea what I said? You can catch it on Mike's film later. 'Cause I don't
Yes.
Seriously, understanding how God expresses, because we get so tied to the physicality of our life. We see, when we talk about cause and effect, everybody goes, okay, this teeter-totter here, when it goes down, this side goes up, and we get that physicalness, right? And so that's how we relate cause and effect. If I shoot a cue ball and I hit a ball here, one goes over there, it's cause and effect. But God doesn't work that way. God works from source, first cause. Doesn't need a diagram, doesn't need pre-existing anything. But as long as we tie ourselves to that pre-existing, we've limited God, because it's done unto us as we believe. If I believe that the only way that I'm going to have more income is to get a better job, or to have, a relative die and leave me a lot of money, or win the lottery, or all this stuff, every time I tick off one of those things, I think, well, I'm increasing the potential possibilities. But an infinite potential possibilities is so much more than anything I can think of. And that's the mistake we make. We go to a doctor for our health, absolutely. But we don't go to the doctor to be healthy. Doctors help the body get healthy. God helps us as healthy, as the what is, as the energy, as the expression. But as long as we tie ourselves back to medical science, then we've limited ourselves in that way. And that's a hard lesson for some of us to learn. Because when the body hurts, I don't know about you, but I got hurts on my body. It reminds me, that hurts. And I go to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, here, take this pill and it won't hurt so much. Will that make no, it won't make it go away, but you'll just enjoy it a little bit more. Well, I don't want to enjoy it more. I want to be health expressed.
Yes.
That's why Eric Butterworth, in his lectures, he used to say, there's nothing to be healed, just truth to be revealed. And we go from that point. God is everywhere. That's the mindset. That's our belief. And that's the goodness. And so it is.
And so it is.
Require that we hurt ourselves. The law of circulation doesn't require that we sacrifice ourselves. The law of circulation only requires that we give from our heart, whatever it is that we give, and then be aware that we've given from our heart. And as we do that, what we've given will come back to us, and it will grow. Our confidence grows, our faith grows, our belief grows, and our goodness grows. And I thank you for sharing with us today. And I know as we go on, as we get bigger, as we grow, and we are growing. I know today doesn't look like it, but we are. We were full here a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
We'll be full here probably next week. At least we better be, right? No. But I'm thankful.
Yes, we will.
We are, because we're making a difference in Fresno.
Yes, we
And
are.
that I know to be fact. And I thank you. And so it is.
And so
So,
it is.
as you go through the week, know that the light of God surrounds you, the love of God enfolds you, the power of God protects you, and the presence of God watches over you. Because wherever you are, God is there, and all is well. Blessings, my friend. Have a great week. I'll see you next Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Michael, thank you for filming.